information to you about animal paws and tracks and how to identify them. I'll also be making a mix of intentional and unintentional paw-related puns. Apologies. So at Alameda County Vector Control, we receive between 1,600 and 1,800 requests for service from the public per year regarding a variety of wildlife that may transmit diseases. The wildlife that we encounter most, and that I'll be focusing on for my presentation today, are skunks, raccoons, and opossums. These pictures were taken by myself and my coworker Stephanie Kerniawan during inspections. So why paw prints? Well, as with most pest control and IPM, the first step is identifying which animal is present so that the most effective control methods can be used. Sometimes the resident has seen the animal and already knows what is there, but sometimes they're either unsure of what they saw or they haven't actually seen the animal. If that's the case, then there are a couple of ways of identifying it, including setting up a trail camera to get pictures or footage of the animal. But the drawbacks of using a trail camera is that it can require multiple nights of monitoring before an identification can be made. However, if paw prints are present, it's possible to identify the animal on the initial inspection, allowing for control methods to begin as soon as possible. Today I'm going to be discussing the different characteristics of skunk, raccoon, and opossum paw prints and how to tell them apart. But before I dive into showing you prints left by the animal paws, I'm going to review some terms and general paw and track morphology. So starting with the top of the paw or track are the nails or claws. Next come the toe pads, which are similar to our human finger pads, followed by the palm pads and heel pads. The toes are numbered 1 through 5, where toe 1's location is equivalent to a human thumb, and toe 5 is the same location as a human pinky. Negative space is the shape or gap between the parts of the track that register. And the term register means leaves a mark or indent in the track. Finally, the front paw or track is often different from the hind. Now it's time for a dramatic pause before we get down to the specific tracks. All right, let's go ahead and start with the skunk. Skunks are not great climbers, but they are very good at digging, which can be seen in their paw morphology. Striped skunks are the most common skunk in North America. Their front and hind tracks resemble each other. But the front tracks have very large claws, which would register high above the toe pads. Toe 1 is the lowest on both front and hind tracks. And the middle toes will be fused, so they won't splay or spread out, and they'll also point forward. The hind heel pad frequently registers, so it will be most likely present in the track. All right, so those are the characteristics of skunk tracks. Next, I'll show you raccoon tracks. Raccoons are very dexterous and are able to climb, dig, and use their front paws in a similar way to human hands. Raccoon tracks look very similar to a gloved human hand. Raccoon paws have a tapered claw which may register. If they do register, they'll be closer to the toe pads than we just saw in the skunk track. Raccoon tracks show slightly splayed toes, which allow them to be very able climbers. Toe 1, again, is the lowest toe on both the front and hind tracks. The top edge of the palm pad connects to the toes on both the front and hind tracks, so there won't be any negative space between the palm and the toes. On the hind track, the heel pad will reliably register, and the toes, palm pad, and heel pad frequently appear connected. This fully connected track can bring to mind the shape and appearance of a gloved hand. Okay, so now I've gone over the characteristics of raccoon tracks. Next, I'll show you the opossum tracks. Opossums are very able climbers with opposable thumbs on their hind paws that allow them to grasp and hold branches. As you can see in the diagram, the front and hind tracks of opossums are quite different from each other, so I'll review them separately. First, I'll describe the front tracks. Similar to raccoons, their claws are small and may or may not register. If they do, also like raccoons, they'll be close to the toe pads. Speaking of toes, the digits on the front paws are all splayed. As you can see, toes 1 and 5 are pointing in opposite directions, with the other toes spread out between them. This brings to mind the image of a sketch of a setting sun. Meanwhile, the palm pad creates a horseshoe shape with the negative space on the bottom. Those are the key points about opossum front paw prints. Opossum tracks can often be overlapping with the hind track on top of the front track. So what do the hind tracks look like? Well, similar to the front track, toes 1 and 5 point in opposite directions, kind of similar to a hang loose sign. Unlike the front track, where the other toes spread out fairly evenly between toes 1 and 5, the middle toes stay together, leaning towards toe 5. This makes the track resemble a human hand, with, again, toe 1 as the thumb and toe 5 as the pinky. So to review, I've gone over a lot of details about each track, and I don't imagine that you'll remember them all, but you might be able to remember a few key points which will help you tell them apart. First, skunks don't climb, so their toes have no need to splay. Skunks are, though, very good diggers, so they have the long, prominent claws on the front track very high above the toe pads. So if you see very high and obvious claws with toes close together, then it's very likely a skunk track. Next, raccoons have tracks that appear very connected, with the toes, palms, and heel pad all combined. This makes them resemble a gloved hand. Since raccoons are very good climbers, unlike skunks, their toes splay to help them hold on to many different surfaces. So the tracks look like a baby was wearing gloves and walking around on their hands. If you see that, you likely have a raccoon. And finally, we have the opossum, and their tracks will resemble a setting sun and a human hand. Opossums do even more climbing than raccoons, and the shape of their paws help them hold on to smaller branches without falling off. So if it looks like a human hand pushed down on top of a setting sun drawing, you likely have an opossum. Here are our references, and we just want to give special thanks to Lee Burton of Naturalist Studies for providing a lot of the information here. Thank you for your attention. Does anyone have any questions or additional paw puns they'd like to share?